Lynn, we've heard a lot about patents, about licenses, about protecting intellectual property, which to some extent may sound fairly defensive when you come from the internet world, which is all about open standards, openness, exchanges. We just heard from CERN how the World Wide Web has been born here, etc., has not been patented, maybe was not patentable at the time. How do you see that as a contradiction, as something that needs to be reconciled, or what are your views on how innovation, the World Wide Web, the internet can be better combined in the future?
I think balance in all these things is key. I mean, the web is probably the most important application that's been developed on top of the internet. And frankly, if it was patented at the time and that actually limited development, the internet community would have routed around it. There would have been a World Wide Web Prime or something else that actually would have facilitated. At the internet's development, the heart of the internet's development, it was user-centric. It was that users get to determine what they read, what they access, what they need, and their ability to develop and deploy solutions to those needs is really what is it really at the heart of the internet's development. You can call it user-centric internet, which we have in the past. You can say that it facilitates permissionless innovation. At the end of the day, it's allowing users to have maximum choice with respect to what they access, what they deploy, what they use, how they solve their own problems. So I think, again, if it was patented, the internet community would have found a way to route around it. One of the other important things is in that model is that as individuals, we don't need to wait for some central authority or some hierarchical authority to determine what the solution will be, what services or products will be delivered, when or how they will be deployed, or how they will be priced. And that is certainly threatening to a lot of current business models, but I don't think it needs to be. In a recent McKinsey report actually showed that the internet drove 21% of GDP growth, and a significant piece of that growth actually came out of traditional industries. Maybe as one other quick example of innovation, Twitter. And we can all agree or disagree on how useful Twitter is. But at the end of the day, 140 characters, when that first came out, people said, what can be done with this? But hashtags, which allows you to track topics and threads, was actually developed by users, not by the Twitter founders, not by the Twitter company organization, by users. The same thing with implementing URLs. So their platform was just open enough that it allowed people to facilitate, which drove value into their product, and ultimately value for them as an organization, a company. I think there's a lot of other, Facebook, Google, the web, and applications on the web are other examples of being open enough, sometimes just open enough, to actually facilitate value being developed and built into your products. And I think the hardest thing is to actually lean into openness and lean into sharing across product development, across policy circles. One of the other things that, if you read some of the early internet papers, one of the other notions was you share one idea, you get many in return. And I think that's something that has continued to carry through in terms of the internet kind of culture, if you will.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Due to our constraint on time, and because I want to leave the last word to Francis Gurry, let me just try not to try and summarize what has been a very rich set of presentations and points here, but maybe to highlight a few that struck me most. And I'm totally biased about that. We've heard from the specific experience of two major economies, India and Russia. We've heard the points of views from global, regional organizations and from an academic points of view, academic points of views as well. And several keywords emerge from that. I think the first word that emerged is that innovation is about sharing. We've heard it in different tones and variations, but clearly no innovation can be today conceived or imagined as coming from one specific brain or even one specific lab. Cooperation, collaboration has become key in that area, and CERN is, of course, a very significant incarnation of that. The second word, which has been pronounced in different guises on this panel, is that of openness. Clearly, from the the point of view of internet society, it's a keyword, it's the keyword. But reference has been made also to the experience of India and this inflection point. If we looked at the trade policy of India and when the economy became more open, there's probably a very strong coincidence. So it's not just openness of brains, it's openness of borders, it's openness to different cultures, different ways of doing things, to imagine what could be different. The fourth key sentence or keyword was that of the fact that, and this has been mentioned by Sumitra Dutta earlier in his presentation of the index, this is not the ultimate index. It is a tool for action. It is a tool that is there to be improved, and the way to improve it is through dialogue. It's through discussions like that, saying, this is good, this could be better, this is bad, this needs to be added. So we, of course, count very much on your further inputs, discussions, feedback to improve on this work. Also, a key word that has been pointed at is growth, improvement, doing things differently. Clearly, the sensitivity analysis, what can be built on an index like that, is absolutely key. Because, as I mentioned before, it's not an academic exercise, it's not a report to put on the shelf. If it is not used to improve the situation of countries, economies, people, and corporations, it is not what it should be. And last but not least, and I think all of you mentioned it, innovation is not about technology. It's not about industry. It's not even about countries. It's about people. It's about improving the lives of people. It's about enabling people to do their best and be their best. Gray matter is by far the commodities which is the most evenly distributed on the surface of this planet. So innovation is clearly the way in which everybody can be, every individual can be given this opportunity to show what they can do, to translate it into an improvement of their respective lives and those who are around them. So thank you very much for that. As promised, I turn to our wild card, the Director General of WIPO, Francis. Any additional word of wisdom for us, please?
Thank you very much, Bruno. Thank you very much, Bruno. After that summary, I think it's wonderful summary. Let me just make one comment, if I may, because Rolf Dieter has, I'll exercise my wild card against Rolf Dieter. I don't at all disagree with his point about the placing far more emphasis in the index on basic science. In fact, I think it's an indispensable thing to be doing, and it is the source of substantive innovation. But let me just remind you, if I may, that intellectual property is a very flexible instrument. It's a very flexible instrument. So, for example, had the World Wide Web been able to be patented, and I think that's a question in itself, perhaps the amount of investment that has gone into or would be able to go into basic science would be different. So if you had found a very flexible licensing model in which the burden for the innovation of the World Wide Web had been shared across the whole user community in a very fair and reasonable manner and with a modest contribution for everyone for this wonderful innovation, it would have enabled an enormous investment in turn in further basic research. And that is the sort of flexibility that is built into the intellectual property system. It is not a rigid system. It can be used in a vast variety of manners in which to encourage innovation. And indeed, one of its other roles is the sharing of knowledge, because it has put together the most accessible and systematic record of humanities technology. And the example I like to use is of the saxophone, which is the only instrument in the classical orchestra that has ever been patented, and it was patented in 1842 by Adolf Sax. And over the ensuing period of 30 or 40 years, a number of improvements were indeed patented to the sax by Adolf Sax himself, but by a number of other inventors, improvements in the mouthpiece. We ended up with a much better saxophone, which fell into the public domain over 100 years ago as a piece of technology. And you can contrast that, of course, with the violin, where nobody knows how the violins of Cremona in the 18th century were made, because the secret was lost. as it was passed in secrecy from family to family and not disclosed. So, yes, I agree with Lynn. The first version of the World Wide Web would have perhaps been routed around, as you say, or invented around, but that's part of the purpose of the patent system, is to disclose the knowledge and enable others to build upon that knowledge. Thank you.